Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we put the business back in lady business. Hosted by Jennifer Justice, founder and CEO of the Justice Department, a management strategy and law firm that works with female and woke male entrepreneurs, executives, talent, brands, and creatives to build and maximize their wealth, focusing in the areas of tech, consumer product, finance, media, entertainment, and fashion. Jennifer interviews entrepreneurial women who have done it all, who will be sharing their secrets on all things business, especially as a woman. These highly successful women will share strategies and insights, including what not to do and what it takes to win. And now, here's your host, Jennifer Justice.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business, where we're putting the business back into lady business. Today, we have on Dee Poku, the CEO and founder of WIE Suite. Hi, Dee.
Hello, hello. So nice to see you.
I know. I mean, I haven't seen Dee, even though Dee and I are both in the WIE Suite. I mean, I'm obviously a member of the WIE Suite. Like, we haven't seen each other, and the whole business is built on community and seeing women, but we haven't seen each other in person. Hopefully we'll remedy that soon. And she was also just telling me how her son is home, who's in the 4th grade. Cannot believe he's already in the 4th grade. Because of course there's a COVID case. So she's momming and podcasting and running a business today, as we do every day.
Chief Mama Officer.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who do not know, tell us about the WIE Suite and what it is.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me on. And second, congrats. I know this is going to be wildly successful. So the WIE Suite is a membership community for women in leadership. And the idea is to create a platform and spaces where women who've achieved a lot of success, whether they're founders or executives, can connect with their peers, but in a very tangible and transactional way. So I think for me, that was the key and the sort of differentiator, because I'm in and have been in many communities, and women are great at forming community. But what I want us to do is be more like the guys, in the sense of really just thinking about how we're driving wealth to each other as women, and just sort of not being afraid to cross lines as far as what we ask for and what our needs are, and just being really sort of giving in the business sense. So that's really what the WIE Suite is. Amazing.
And so how long has it been around now?
Well, I've been piloting it for 3 years with this sort of core group, and now we're just sort of actively expanding with lots of exciting things coming up.
Right. But before this, you've been in community for how long now? I mean, what was your background that led you into it? It's such an interesting story.
Sure. Yeah. So that my son just sneezed because he's home quarantining. So sorry about that. So, I spent most of my career in the entertainment industry, like you, but on the film side. And, has been revealed through Me Too and various things. It's a process, to put it mildly, and it's very cutthroat, and certainly, in many aspects of demeaning to women. And I certainly, I was based in LA, and I definitely felt very sort of alone and isolated many times in my career, and didn't necessarily have a space to go to or a place to go to for that. LA back then was like a very one industry town. So everyone was in the business. So even with your friends, you had to be careful about what you said, because you never really knew whether it would come back around in some fashion. So I think that's just a very isolating way to live and to navigate your career. And so when I left, that was like the first thing I wanted to do, was like create that space that I wished I'd had when I was sort of navigating those spaces. So I've been doing this a while. I've cared about this issue a while. This is like not a new thing for me. And so the sort of first iteration of that was a community for, a conference for women. So a friend and I, who sort of started the conference together, were sort of well aware of like the business conferences that existed. They were, again, this is going to be a common theme. They were heavily male dominated, no women on stage, no women off stage. And so we wanted to create a community and a sort of a conference that was focus on women, that could highlight women, that could bring successful women into the same room as women who were coming up. We wanted it to feel cooler and more fun and more dynamic and more sort of in sync with who we were, and less sort of fusty and boring. And so we wanted it to be all those things. And so I've been, so that was in 2010. It was called the WIE Symposium. And we had lots of very fabulous women speak, from Jill Biden to Nancy Pelosi to Queen Rania to Melinda Gates to all sorts of people. So, I've been in this space a while, just doing this thing.
Right. And how have you seen that evolve since 2010, right? Like that was, I was involved with Dee during that time, and I was just watching women in the music industry being paid substantially less than their male counterparts with substantially less experience. And I was advising all these women, and I just felt so alone because I didn't feel like anybody cared about it, including half the time some of the women, not because they didn't care about it, because they were scared to care about it. And and it was pretty lonely back then. And then I found Dee, and I was like, oh my God, she cares about this too. And she's actually doing something about it. So, I wanted to help as much as I could. So tell me from your perspective how things have changed and evolved and grown since 2010, which is 11 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that there's this sort of prevailing idea that if you put a woman in charge, everything changes. And I don't think it's that simple. I think that women can be just as much victims of the patriarchy as men. So we can take on the sort of same values and ideas about what it is to lead, who to promote, like how to conduct yourself, that sort of, have been sort of passed down from, the men who sort of served as our role models and mentors. So I think that sometimes we have to do that work ourselves of like, restarting, like breaking out of those sort of strictures and really sort of thinking about like, what is it to lead for me as a woman? Like, can I be vulnerable? Can I be empathetic? Can I be collaborative? Like, do I have to shout and stomp and throw things and bully people, which was, what leadership used to mean. So certainly I've seen that evolve in terms of like what it means to lead. And I think even the pandemic has really brought that to the fore, because you couldn't really have that management style in this period where everyone was sort of burned out and, and exhausted and confused. Like you had to bring your full vulnerable self to the table. So I've seen that change. I've seen the young women really sort of change the game, sometimes successfully, sometimes it goes awry, but there was definitely obviously an era of, girl bosses and like, young women just being like, I'm not going to deal with that stuff. And I like the sentiment behind it, even, when it wasn't quite fully realized. I think that they were definitely sort of demanding a new normal for themselves. And I think that's good. The conference space sort of really exploded. So suddenly, when we started the WIE Symposium, no one really cared, like a conference just for women. Like it wasn't like women cared, but the sort of brands, like they were just sort of more interested in the establishment. And then suddenly, it's like femvertising, like every brand wanted to be involved in a conference or be part of one. And it just became trendy. And so that was, that's definitely has been a big change. And I think that all of that has come full circle. You can't really get away with just jumping on a bandwagon anymore, because people will take you to task, right? So be careful what you do and be careful what you align yourself with. If your board, only has one man in it, or if your C-suite is not diverse, people will come for you. And that's also a whole conversation.
The power of social media, but also Me Too, right? That was a massive pivot as well. And what I saw was everyone going, wait, this isn't just happening to me. It's happening to everyone. And there's obviously varying degrees of being, raped by people like Harvey Weinstein to sexually, your ass grabbed by Chris Cuomo to just being patronized constantly in a room full of men asked to go get the water when you're like one of the most senior executives there, you know what I mean? But the behavior has been called out, and the statistics and and what came across is it's virtually happened to every single woman that's ever worked or existed in her life. Like every woman has felt this, and we're 50% of the population, and that is not acceptable, right? And so we were living with it and being okay with it as women because we thought we had to, right?
Yeah, we thought we had no choice. I mean, I think that certainly, like when I was in the film business, there were, 6 men who ran the business, one of whom was Harvey. Like there was like so much power concentrated in the hands of so few. And so it just created this, vast sort of imbalance where you really felt like, if I want to have this career in this business that is so small and run by so few, like I have to go along with the status quo. And of course, no one was really talking about what was happening to them. And so that's why, like, Tarana Burke's Me Too movement was so effective. It was just like, yes, me too. It happened to me. And there was this like groundswell. And so I thought that was, that's been incredible. And obviously the ripple effect across all industries has been really important. And, last year with George Floyd, that sort of brought diversity and especially sort of support of the Black community front and center, because that, I felt like, some companies got it, but there were so many who only paid lip service. And I think that George Floyd, really did change the world. And he really sort of, through that movement, brought the issue of Black lives like front and center of society and corporations and politics. And so I think we've just seen like a lot of wholesale change, or the beginnings of change still. I wouldn't say we're there.
No.
Given that we're fighting for abortion rights again. But certainly, the beginnings, or, like bigger conversations around those issues, than had ever been had before.
Right. And because the statistics are still really dismal, right? Mm-hmm. It went down from 2.7% in 2019 of women getting venture funding, even more, way more dismal if you're a woman of color. So isn't it like even down in 2020? There's like all this record number of VCs, like funding all these companies. And still it's like now 2%, back down to 2%.
It's so ridiculous. It spiked in 2019. So everyone was like, hooray, it's up to 2.9. And then, what's particularly interesting is that there were more funding dollars dispensed in 2020. So there was more spent, but less of it went to women, which was it's like, so we were in the middle of a reckoning on all fronts. And that's why you have to be very sort of skeptical of pledges and, and what people say. You really have to sort of look behind the veil to see what they're doing, because like, that's a great example.
Yeah. It's like, you care about women, all of your companies, then why aren't you funding them?
Exactly.
Why don't you have female partners? Yeah. Like, why don't you widen the base and give, more angel and seed funding to women of color? And, because there's no such thing as friends and family that are going to fund you. It's just like, whereas, you come across these dudes in Silicon Valley, it's like, hey, hold on 1 second. I just need $50 million. Okay, I'm ready. You're just like, what just happened? That's actually happened to me when somebody was like, just a minute, and like on a lunch. And it's like, okay, no. I just had to close this $100 million gap. And I was like, you just did that while sitting across from me.
Yeah.
It takes 200 meetings for a woman of color to get that.
Totally. And, and I think, again, it sort of speaks to what I'm trying to build with the WIE Suite, is that we're really sort of putting money down. And I'm personally, on my vision board, I have that, I don't know if you've seen that diagram of like the PayPal mafia. And so the PayPal mafia were, a bunch of men who all worked for PayPal in the early stages, who all did were very sort of successful, went on to different careers, but continued to financially support one another. And so they've just sort of generated billions of dollars in wealth for one another's businesses because of the way they operated. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's just such a lesson for us as women, that we really sort of think about the wealth aspect and the power aspect of how we advance society. Like if we're not in a position to write those checks, we're not in a position to hire, to be decision makers, then we're going to still, we're going to keep going around in circles and with these sort of silly incremental rises in funding or in diversity forever. Like we need to be, in the seats of power. Like I just spoke on a panel actually where, lovely man who was talking about putting himself in a woman's shoes and, and had all this, he was trying to do the right thing. And I thought that was great, and my response to him was like, yeah, but we also just need men to like give up power, like to step aside and let us be the shoes, be in the shoes. Rather than you have to like imagine what it's like let us, chart our own futures.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what, like, look, both of our companies have the same mission, right? Which is to make women money, because when you money, you have the power. Totally. And unapologetically, it's like enough of this, like, oh, money's yucky. It's like, no, it's not. It gives you freedom. Totally. It allows you to take care of your son when he's sick on a quarantine day, right, because you have a choice now to do that. And it gives you choices in life. It does not make you happy, but it gives you choices. And the lack of choices actually makes you miserable. And so it's something so important. And so it's a whole thing. Yes. It's like if the patriarchy wanted women in there, we would, because they're in power, but they don't. So it's like places like the WIE Suite, the Justice Department, like what we're all doing is let's give each other business and only each other business and build the matriarchy, So we want to talk about little things that like the WIE Suite's doing, and, how we all communicate and the investor, the investing fund and all that kind of stuff, a little bit, give more context to that.
I mean, I think that what I love about the way the WIE Suite operates is that, I'm almost in a position where I can step back because I've set a culture and a mission, and I'm very sort of mindful about the curation and who gets to become a member, that they also have the same sort of value set as we do. And so, so what it creates is this dynamic where everyone is giving. And obviously, if you're in a dynamic where everyone is giving, it means that everyone is receiving. And so, I think that, happy and really sort of proud that that exists. And so we have this sort of forum right now, we're digital. So we have this sort of forum where people just post questions, like needs that they have. And I check in on every single one to make sure that everyone got a response. Because sometimes people reply all and sometimes they reply privately. But I always check in. And if I need to do jazz hands at the back end and make sure it happens, I will do it. But it happens, like everyone gets the response they need. They get the introductions. So I feel like that part's really important, that sort of give and take of like business tactics and introductions. I really believe in introductions. That is happening. Definitely one thing, particularly proud of is we have an angel community. And I remember actually during the Black Lives Matter protest last year, there was one member, and I think it was Baba Rivera, who's a founder. She posted to the group, because we were all having conversations about like, what are we doing, tangibly. And she said, like, I'm investing in this Black-owned business. Anyone else want to come in with me? And I remember she kind of got all these responses. And it was like a bit of an aha. We actually, we have women who can write checks. And so what are we doing about that? And then Rochelle, another member, came to me and said, I would like to, create and lead an angel investing network within the WIE Suite, because I'm seeing that, people are actually active. So she went off and created the WIE Suite Angels, and they meet once a month and they share deal flow and they focus on underrepresented founders. And to date, so since it started, which was just a few months ago, we've invested like over $700,000 in, underrepresented founded businesses. And I think that that's amazing, because it's just really women writing, small checks, 5,000 here, 10,000 here, the odd person writes more, but in aggregate, it's really sort of reveals the power of women when we come together and pool our resources.
Yeah. And that means a lot to them. And there's a lot of money, like exchanging hands, and like, it's really difficult to go out and do all those individual meetings. And then if you can just present to the WIE Suite Angel Fund at like one time, and you're, talking to 20 different women, to 40 different women at any given time, it's also much more efficient, you know what I mean? Because your time is your money and your resources. And, so yeah, and then, I mean, I found it very valuable too. And the fact that Rochelle took that on is like, I mean, it's amazing because she does have a full-time job too, not to mention,
Yes.
and pregnant.
And pregnant. I
Yeah.
know, because this is what we do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
We should be given all the things because we do every, like.
Dad in my son's class was just like, they had just moved. And he's like, JJ, I don't know how you did it because I moved in January. He's like, I don't know how you did it. And like the kid's going to school and you moved and you're like a single mom. And I was like, Jason, women are much stronger than men. Okay, let's just be real.
Yes. If you don't know, now you know.
Exactly. So look, I think that it's great that these exist in the WIE Suite. Obviously, it's like women, it's not, we're not giving each other advice on nannies and stuff like that. We're talking about real business things and opportunities. But, I think that women have a long way to go too. Like, what do you think are some things that women need to start doing in general a little bit more and like better, like things that we could get better at to compete with the boys and help bring power and wealth to ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to think bigger. And I know that, we get told that a lot and perhaps it's annoying. But it's true. Like, I've been sort of working on, potentially fundraising, and I showed it to, actually I showed it, I'll mention it. I showed it to Julie Wainwright from The Real, because, I think she's amazing. And obviously she has $1 billion company that she IPO'd. And she was like, but like, why? She was like, why is your amount so small? Like, what are you going to do with that money? Like, you have to, and it was just, and I thought, well, I'm victim to it myself, right? I'm walking around telling everyone to do all the things. And then you find yourself doing the same thing because there's that sort of fear of like asking for too much. And so I think that, and the advice that I've been given by all of my friends who've successfully raised is like, you need to come up with like laughable numbers. Like you need to have ambitions for yourself that almost sound ridiculous to you. Like you have to sort of, because that's what guys are doing. Like you have to be like, I'm changing the world. My company is going to do this like at the highest levels, and I think that, and there's nothing wrong with the way we operate, because I think, we are practical and pragmatic, right? And I think that that is important and good. And if you have a woman CEO, like she's de-risking your company with that approach. But I think that it's like finding that balance of, again, like unshackling yourself from where you think you should be, to really sort of catapulting yourself to the highest levels.
Right.
I think that's important. I think that we should stop drawing the line in the sand, as you just said, in terms of like talking about money with one another. I think that we should be less afraid of introductions. I think people get very sort of nervous about like who they introduce, or like it's this relationship, and I'm like, no, and it's just like, what if you can't make those introductions, they're not your friend, right? I mean, because they have to trust that you're bringing someone to the table that will ultimately be valuable to for them, or that they can really do good for. So like either way, either you're going to be valuable to one another, or you're going to really sort of give back to someone in a way that is good. So either way, like it's worth doing. So I think that that's really important. And I think the final thing I would say is like just the value of community and just building really good communities and being really sort of thoughtful and intentional about who you surround yourself with. Because I would certainly say that I'm surrounded by women who hold me to account. Like, being your friend, I just know there is just no bullshit ever at any point. And I think that having that and just being surrounded by like ambitious women who care, I think just makes me better. And so I think that, just really being sort of thoughtful and intentional about your network.
Right. No, that's all. I agree with all those things. I mean, the first one really is about your limiting beliefs, right? It's like, it's hard because it's not, what we do is we don't want to say like, oh, when we do everything wrong. That's not it. Like we have amazing traits. Let's embrace the differences between men and women, but there's certain things about business that just exist, right? Like in negotiations, sometimes I have clients like, just don't be mean. I'm like, I'm not mean. I'm getting you what you want.
Yeah.
But there's actual evidence that if you're nice in a negotiation, you're not going to get close to what you want. Okay. It's not about being mean or nice. This is about negotiating. Let me do what I do and you do what you do, you know? And that's one of them. It's like limiting beliefs in general about, you know, what you deserve or who you know, or one of the reasons, like another, you know, I'm interviewing a lot of lawyers about like what they do so women can understand that it's absolutely necessary if you're in business to have a lawyer. It is absolutely necessary. You will pay more money in the mistakes by signing agreements and structuring deals without an actual experienced individual as an attorney that does that for a living, then you'll pay more times 10 than you will in paying that person. And you know, there's no men that has no attorney. They're like, they all have an attorney and they all brag about it, you know? And so it's a limiting beliefs that like, you don't deserve it, or, you know, we can do it all on our own, not because we think that we're better. It's because it's like, we just don't think we deserve it. Maybe like we don't do our own hair. We don't do our own nails or watch our own kids for some reason. When it comes to business, it's like, I can do it all. I'm a publicist and an attorney and an accountant and you know, and so those kinds of.
So true. It's like, it absolutely speaks to, you know, where we're willing to put our money, you know, our dollars, right? And so like, those are the things that are important, like having professionals around you that will ultimately pay dividends in the long term.
Yeah.
It's so much more important. Like, you know, I know women who will spend a fortune on a dress or, you know, whatever, and they should and are entitled to, but you should also be comfortable putting that same money behind your career.
It's a
and
form
your
of self-love.
Totally.
Yes. You know, so yes, I agree with that. I also totally agree with the introductions. Like I've been in a position where I've asked them like, does anybody know XYZ? And I'm like, well, why do you want to know them? It's like, well, because their company is actually infringing on something. And I would rather go in with, you know, a warm intro and say, hey, how can we work this out? And they didn't do the intro. I was like, but now I have to go in hard and be like, business, like they're prepared. They know if they're in like that kind of position, that bad things happen too. And so it's not like you can be like, oh, if I don't make the intro, it's not going to happen. It's happening. You know, you might as well be like, hey, there's some shit about to happen. I figure if you guys talk right now, it might be better. Yes. I would be like, yes, please introduce me instead of hiding in my corner in my office. Like it's got to happen. Right.
Yeah.
And I agree also, just as like, you have to believe that in your community, it's like back to your community point. Like, you know, you have to surround yourself with a community and a tribe. They might not be the women that you go have drinks with or, you know, or talk, you know, about your husbands, you know what I mean? It's like, but they are like, you know, people that you're a tribe and have your back and like are going to give you business and refer you. And I don't know, it's the quote, like, you know, surround yourself with people who, you know, will only get you business when you're not in the room, you know, that kind of like that kind of stuff.
We'll
you
mention
know?
your name in a room full of opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that quote.
I butchered that. What Dee said, that's what you need to do. I mean, all of those things, I think that and I think it really all comes down to our limiting beliefs of what we deserve, because for generations, we have been told where we should be and what our place is. And, you know, it comes out in our, you know, relationships, it comes out in our job opportunities, it comes out in politics, like Texas, like all just trying to hold us down. And then I think, you know, what another one, the biggest one is like building wealth and money, because, you know, look, we are at best get 80% of what men do as a white woman. And that goes down to 40-50% for Native American women, you know, and all women of color in between. Like it's so depressing. But what I think is even worse is our wealth gap and our, you know, like it's probably 20% of what men is. Like women, what are you worth? Doing that analysis, what are you worth individually, you know, without your husband's money or your, you know, family's money? Like we just don't make the same. And over all of that time and years, you know, it's so behind. So it's all like amazing points. And, you know, what you at the WIE Suite are trying to accomplish and, you know.
I mean, I think even sort of when you think about women, you know, who have sort of high net worth and just kind of how they're spending their money. And again, like the percentage who put money into philanthropy versus investment, right? So who are, you know, spending money on like big galas and like writing checks and that, you know, and again, like it's, I'm not saying there's an either or, but I think that there is an approach to wealth building or like wealth dissemination that is different. And I think that men always are thinking about the bottom line and like, you know, how is this money multiplying for me? And so, you know, and so that's like they're seeing like the risk benefits of investing. And so again, like I would love, you know, more women who have a lot of wealth to really, you know, sort of switch over their sort of, you know, the way that they're sort of disseminating money more towards investing.
Versus just in charitable
versus sharing the benefit. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
You buy $25,000 table at a gala. If you gave $25,000 to a fund, like you know,
huge to a founder who's starting out, like you know,
and you can then create more wealth. So everybody's doing that, and really, most of these charities are started by white male greed. Because due to white male greed, right? So it's like we're just funding it, you know, a little bit. So no, I agree with you. I think you know, if the women of high net worth would invest more in female founded companies as blindly as they give $25,000 to a gala, you know, then
you would see a huge. I mean, I think you would just see such a massive difference. I mean, I truly believe in like the generation we're in, and the sort of structures and systems we're in are almost like impossible to really shift in any meaningful way. So I really just think about like the next generation and you know, women who are sort of building businesses and hopefully kind of modeling for the world a new way of being, a new way of running a company, a new way of hiring, a new way of sort of creating culture, you know, and that's just sort of something that, you know, I want to see more of, and why I love the WIE Suite Angels. I think it's really about like, you know, building that next layer and the companies of the future.
That's what the WIE Suite, like that's where you're contributing, like showing women that if you show up for each other, support each other, it helps everyone, including yourself, which is fine, like financially. Which is great.
It's absolutely fine for you to benefit while you're, you know, helping support someone else. Like that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that.
So where is the WIE Suite going, and what are your goals for it?
I have some big plans. I think that, so right now, you know, it's a membership community for, you know, women at the highest levels. And I think, you know, those women are looking for that sort of peer support. They, you know, they want to, you know, if you're a CTO, you want to speak to someone who's going to sort of understand where you're coming from an experience base. But I started off in the women's space, sort of wanting to support women who are coming up. And so I'm working on a model that I think is quite interesting, that has a, you know, basically has a kind of 2-tier structure. And I won't say too much because I feel like it's a bit proprietary, and I'm quite excited.
No. Just like, look, world domination would have been fine.
But it's world domination. It's
lady domination. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so just kind of expanding into other countries, and you know, building out our tech and all those sorts of things.
Amazing. Well, we need to wrap up, unfortunately, because you are busy and you have a sick kid at home. But I ask everyone this question, and what is the worst advice you've ever received?
It's actually advice I was given recently, and just kind of speaks to everything we've been talking about around wealth. But, you know, I had, you know, went to a man for advice on fundraising, and basically, you know, he had told me to be sort of quite modest, you know, in my ask. And so basically all the advice that he gave me was about not overstepping the mark and not sort of trying to sort of overreach. So it was like, no, don't, like, you know, only ask for this much, like, just because I think that he meant well, but he just thought, well, you're like, you know, a Black woman, so like, you know, I wouldn't, like, you're not going to get it.
Stay in your lane, little girl.
Stay in your lane.
Oh,
Was
I
the
know,
advice.
I know.
I,
It's like,
yeah,
that's why it's like giving advice from somebody. It's like, if you've never been in their shoes, how do you even know? You don't know what it's like to walk in a room full of other, being the only other. So it's
yeah,
tough. I get it.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dee. This was awesome. Very anticipated. I wanted to interview you from the very beginning. So thank you for doing this. If people want to find WIE Suite and you, how do they do that?
You can find the WIE Suite on the website, or go to the website, the WIEsuite.com, and find me on social media. I'm at Dee Poku everywhere.
Everywhere, wherever you can
Everywhere.
find social media.
Wherever you find social media, there I am.
There's Dee Poku. Thank you,
Banging my drum.
everybody. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you, everybody, for joining this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. Make sure, like, subscribe, and let us know what other kind of topics you want to talk about. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice.